Imhotep African family. Welcome once again to the Building the Lighted Temple Wisdom Service. And for the purpose of the recording, I am Dr. Nteri Nelson, a metaphysician, a licensed clinician, an educator, and co-founder of the Academy of Kemetic Education and Wellness. So welcome again to these ethereal waters. In the midst of troubled times, we enter into this space, this universalizing resonant vibrational field where we can amplify our vibration and distribute the light in this etheric space, this virtual space that we are cultivating. This is liberated space, family. So welcome each and every one of you. Today, we are continuing with our series, the Ba Soul in its Journey. And we have been focused cosmically as we have been looking at our cosmogenesis and cosmogony, in particular in the book, The Golden Sun Egg Uncracked. And there'll be another video coming in another segment that I'll be doing in that work. But as we continue with the Ba in its journey, last week we looked at Ba as it came over the horizon in that symbol of the sun, the S-U-N, the S-O-N, and daughter, at our spring equinox. Today, beloveds, we are continuing with the Ba and the journey of the soul, as we now look at a key piece of Kemetic literature and instruction entitled the Dispute Between a Man and His Ba. So you can imagine what that might be about. This is how the ancients depicted the Ba soul. I've held up this image before, and I'll hold it up again for now. And then what I want to do is just greet those who are here. Please do remember to put your questions in the Q&A, and we'll get to them. So I want to say, Imhotep, good morning, everyone. All right, so let us proceed. Okay, let us proceed here. Okay. So as we have learned, the Ba is an individuation of spirit, and our African ancestors called spirit Ka. And as such, Ba as soul represents a level of conscious activity, which is called soul by the Cometians. And beloveds, we have been embarking on this major wisdom study in the spiritual journey of unfolding consciousness as we examine closely Ba, the soul, and its meaning. And we are continuing in each one of these series to unfold that journey further. And we do so by immersing ourselves in the primal wisdom, in our primal beginnings, the cosmogenesis, our Genesis story, our cosmogony. And then, beloveds, we come to earth with the thud in understanding its application in daily living. And so we want to glimpse always from the widest angles celestially, and then from that more focused angle terrestrially. So today, beloveds, we're coming to earth with a thud. There's many reasons to do so. There's lots of thudding on earth, as you well know from all the media. And we know the Ba soul experiences, because it is the conscience, the growing soul consciousness, ultimate fulfillment of that consciousness in that level of immersion in matter. And so as the Ba soul, that Ba soul experiences in consciousness, the pleasures and the pains in this spiritual journey of unfolding consciousness. And we will examine what will be titled in our wisdom series on Ba today, the pain of incarnation. We will at another time talk about the pleasures, but this is not the subject at this time, given our understanding of what time it is, and that we are in this critical dimensional shift that is taking place on our planet. And beloveds, we have talked, pretty much extensively about how we are now in the midst of 4 pandemics. The first pandemic I name is the pandemic of white supremacy, which has placed our planet in this material grip in consciousness, as we have been in this material consciousness cycle. The second pandemic is the pandemic of COVID. And the third pandemic is that Band-Aid that's been ripped off of, all the woundedness that has happened on the planet because of this first pandemic. And that woundedness has occurred with the disparities in racial injustice throughout the planet. It has occurred with the disparities in the abuses that have been taking place within the kingdoms of nature, within our environment, and so on. And now, beloveds, we are in the midst now of the 4th pandemic that is has broken out and is widening in its campaign with the invasion of Russia into Ukraine, and all that portends now with the onset of this pandemic. And it's not that there haven't been other wars, but this war has all the potential to escalate, where humanity has to face and confront the question of whether it will annihilate itself, whether it will use nuclear and chemical warfare. So, beloveds, as we come to Earth with a thud today, and we begin to, again, to understand the Ba soul in its journey in unfolding consciousness, we do so in the midst of these 4 pandemics. And secondly, we do so as witnesses. We are witnesses now of the atrocities of whites upon whites, and we see the pain in the faces of fleeing Ukrainians, the pain of war. However, beloveds, we as African and African diaspora are looking at this pain one step removed, meaning this is not the same view that our African and African diaspora have had, for example, as they once looked from behind the eyes of Kunta Kinte, or Harriet Tubman, or Frederick Douglass, or even even as recently as George Floyd. We are stepping back in our view and watching and witnessing from this level as these pains and travails are happening on our planet. And so how are we to understand what we are witnessing? And what are African people at this moment, what are we, as that is taking place, that disturbance, that war, what is not taking place? Or what may we as African and African diaspora be dodging as this war takes place? Well, certainly, beloveds, you know, as I know, that we had all the gaining momentum of civil war that was threatening to erupt with all the issues around the election and Trumpism and the storming of the Capitol in January and so forth and so on. And beloveds, and then we have to ask, but are our concerns off the table in this regard? Well, the answer is no, because we still have to be witness to humanity's decision around nuclear and chemical warfare and cyber warfare, because these will impact all of the planet. They will impact all of us. So we are in a unique moment in our history, in that in and as that Ba soul that is a witness to what is happening on our planet. So this brings us to the wonderful instruction that our African ancestors have left us. And it is entitled The Dispute Between a Man and His Ba. Now, how do you have a dispute between yourself and your Ba? All right. Well, I'm going to take you to the major translation that I recommend by Miriam Lichtem. But first, I just take you to some sources in Wikipedia. And this dispute between a man and his Ba is literature or instruction that was written in the Middle Kingdom, and it's likely the 12th dynasty. And this dispute it's an ancient text that dates back to the Middle Kingdom, and is considered a Sebayt, or a form of wisdom literature or teaching. And it takes the form of a dialogue between a man struggling to come to terms with the hardship of life and his Ba soul. So if you think about this, beloveds, when you or I or any element of humanity has had such a struggle. Now we've learned from our ancient concepts that the soul is considered to be 9 separate parts, and Pertin Brew, our primal text, lists all of these parts, which are called Ba, Hu, Shechem, Ab, Sahu, Ka, Kabat, Kat, and Ren, which is the name, because our name is very important as part of our constitution, which is both human and divine. But among these is the Ba, which is commonly translated as soul. And just quoting from this source, it reads, the Ba soul was thought to represent one's psyche or personality, and was thought to live on after one's death, possessing the ability to traverse between the physical and spiritual realms. So I read the quote by Dr. Ricchetti, who pretty much says the same, that there, even at death, there is this separation and this energy that continues. And now, so I held this up, if we think about the Constitution, which we've been talking about and which we've been studying in the Tree of Life of Ka, Ab, and Ba, what is happening in our Ba is this garnering within our Constitution of that which we've been able to garner in consciousness through this experience, through this this immersion in matter that we are having, where we are both spiritual and divine. What we are a form, but we are consciousness in form that is having an experience, and we're witnessing what's happening in the nightly and daily news, even as we speak. So this Ba, at the time of death, as we talked about a couple of Sundays ago, is that ability to take that garnered wisdom from this lifetime, this experience, like a download of a computer chip, because that is how we are gaining in our garnered collective consciousness. What we have been able to download in this lifetime as being ensouled in this present form, this present encapsulation that we're in this level of immersion that we're in. So this computer chip download of the by the nature God that is ensouling the form that we are at this level of immersion, the form level where that is in the process of sighting itself in form, in this level of immersion, at this level of consciousness. So you can put your questions in the Q&A. I'm sure you might have some. All right, so this Ka'aba, so let's continue the story. So in this story of the Ba soul a man in dispute with his Ba soul, the original manuscript opens with a man lamenting, complaining that his Ba is disobeying him. Now, just try to configure that, beloveds. His Ba, because we know this is all our template, who we are, human and divine, right? But the man, so we're talking about this lower level or consciousness at this level, is lamenting. You know how you're in a conversation with yourself, which is in a conversation with a higher aspect of yourself. So you're lamenting about life. And so this is how the story begins. It begins with the original manuscript opens with a man lamenting that his Ba is disobeying him. So what is this saying? The man states that he desires to reach the West, i.e. the afterlife, and rebukes his Ba for restraining him from death before he has come to it. So here we are, as man, woman, have those conversations internally about which are the pain of incarnation, where we must remain poised in our Haru, whether we are experiencing pain or pleasure. How do we remain poised in our Haru, whether we are experiencing pleasure or pain? And so the man remarks upon the possibilities of what death holds. So this is when humanity entertains the thought of death and dying. The man remarks upon the possibilities of what death holds, convinced of the value of funerary practices over human life. So he's really looking at his exit. He proceeds to promise a bountiful burial and prosperity in death to his Ba soul, in an attempt to persuade it towards death. So this is that I would just call it that lower nature, that pains, that is not fully in touch with the higher nature. This is more a conversation that happens when we are not focused within our, when we're more focused in our Ka triangle and not as focused in our Ab and Ba triangle. Because when we have lifted our consciousness and awareness into the Ab and Ba triangle, then we are clear on our life purpose, our mission and intention. And we fall less vulnerable into a kind of wanting to escape. And so this is part of the human experience. This is part of being both human and divine. And so he's starting to bargain. He proceeds to promise a bountiful burial and prosperity in death to his Ba soul in an attempt to persuade it towards death. And you know, for our ancients, those funerary ceremonies, those burial ceremonies were with great expense and majesty and symbolism. And so here, in a premature way, this being is, this man is in this conversation, as if one could entice the Ba soul with enriched royal and elaborate ritual pomp and circumstance, because this is clearly, beloveds, what is called running ahead of the soul, running ahead of one's soul, one's own personal will, running ahead of the soul and divine will. The man's Ba, the story goes on, the man's Ba responds by reminding the man of the sadness death brings, and that all men, rich or poor, share the same fate, as their legacy will fade from this world regardless of their funerary practices. So the soul is talking back, you see. And these kinds of communications are going on within the spirit, and within the mind, within the body, because as Haru, we know, beloveds, that we are betwixt and between spirit and matter. We're betwixt and between, and we are always trying to reconcile and make sense of especially as we know we are spirit, the benefit of staying encapsulated in this form, and especially when the form is undergoing the travails. I mean, we saw during we know during enslavement that when there were those on the ships of enslavement who jumped overboard and made that decision to attempt to exit that form, even though that the time, even though they may have lived it had they not made that decision. And all right, so just to continue here, so the Ba instead urges the man to forget his thoughts of mortality and enjoy life. So, you know, this is a man focused on his mortality, pain of incarnation, pain of existence. And this is an important moment for not only us as a humanity, but for us as an ancient people, as African and African diaspora people who have a long view on world history, to reflect on the travails that have been, that we have come through, and the travails that may be up ahead, even to be a witness to the travails up ahead, requires great countenance, requires great fortitude, and moreover, beloveds, how we have to keep moving forward no matter what. We cannot carry. we cannot linger. And what I talked about last week is it's not our blood, sweat, and tears have drenched this earth. It is not our time for grieving. That doesn't mean that we don't pain and feel the suffering of others, and it means we are empathic with the suffering of others. We know it very well. We know it very well. We know it. You know, our African ancestors. You know, in Ghana, you know, I've been to the slave dungeon there at Elmina. Whole villages would scatter as the slave traders came through, causing much displacement. So we know we have a long view of these travails. And so how might we look at where we are now on the planet? And so the Ba instead urges the man to forget his thoughts of mortality and enjoy life, because this man is focused on that mortality and what's happening in the body, in the mind, and is undergoing the pain of incarnation, the pain of existence. We have certainly undergone the pain of existence. So thus, beloveds, you see the dual-mindedness that we have, the dual-mindedness of this mortality versus everlasting life, because we know that that's our, if our consciousness is expanded enough, and we are tapping into our primal wisdom, we know that there is everlasting life. There is everlasting life. And yet we are in this matter spirit, betwixt this and between this matter and spirit, betwixt and between being human and divine. And but to read further in this description of the story, before we get into the story, the man, unconvinced, cites the evil and hardship of the world and promises of an afterlife in accordance with ancient Egyptian religious beliefs. So he's unconvinced. He cites the evils and hardships of the world. Now, just think of all of our ancestors who came through the most vile circumstances on our planet. How were they able to hold on to in that Ba soul and complete their cycle of immersion in that level of matter, and witness and consciousness, and have their form impacted by the external world in very painful and devastating ways. And we see now, we are witnessing now, and beloveds, let's make it plain, fortunate or unfortunate, folks are witnessing what's happening now in Ukraine from the comfort of their living room. And that's a different place of standing than we typically find ourselves. So what are we to make of that? And what do the lessons from our ancestors teach us about this moment? So we see here a man in debate with his soul, a debate with his ba. A man or woman are going to be more subject to this debate when they are not, as I said earlier, focused within the Ab triangle, and their identification is more with the form, more with the Ka triangle, the physical, the emotional, the mental body, and what's impacting that. They're not in that higher aspect of their equipment, and so having the tools to navigate now is harder. And for those who are healers, practitioners, being more aware of struggles that people are going to have because of their point of view is important if you're going to really be of greater service. And knowing your soul purpose, your reason and meaning, what you have come to do is so important. That so a man and a woman are going to be more subject to this debate when they are not focused above the diaphragm in the Ab triangle, and their identification is within the Ka triangle, which is their device, and that their higher Ab and Ba soul, that the Ab and Ba soul are utilizing as an instrument in this world, but they're being unable to identify as and with a higher plan and purpose for one's life. Then it continues where it says, the text ends with the man's Ba encouraging the man to continue his practices in hope of an afterlife, but to continue his life and not wish for its end before its time. So let's just sit with some questions, beloved, and then we'll see how far we can, just to ponder. How many have had such debate or discourse with your Ba soul about the reason, meaning, and purpose of being and continuing in this life? Just ponder, beloveds. And how many have pondered the afterlife, its promise of something better, different, and yearn for this? When we have that classic fight or flight response, when we want to flight, we sometimes don't even know where we're flighting to. We just know that where we are is not where we want to be. So how many have pondered that afterlife? And that afterlife is different given the level of consciousness and what people's understanding is of that afterlife. But ponder something other than one's current level of immersion is normal and natural, and something people have done and will continue to do, especially in moments of great travail, especially moments of great travail that have happened in the past, that have happened and that are happening in the present. And our African ancestors give us the keys, the tools to navigate the spiritual journey of unfolding consciousness, because there's nothing new under the sun, and they dealt psycho-spiritually with all aspects of mortality and immortality that we face, and they are equipping us through the wisdom they have left us. So they grappled with these one in the same ideas that that are upon us now. Let me just come over here and look at some of the chat, or if there's, we're up to 19, that's beautiful. Let me see what's in the chat. I don't see any questions, and then I'll go back just a moment. Yeah, we're hitting the earth with a thud because we need to come to earth with a thud. We see what we know what was unleashed upon us. We know the capability, and it's about a decision. Like Putin made a decision. It's not just about capacity. He had the tanks all surrounding. He had capacity. We have nuclear capacity. That's not the issue. Although you have to have capacity to make the decision, but it really is about the decision and the leadership, the world leadership that needs to come into view, that's going to make these correction courses, these very skilled correction courses, so that we stay on. We make the good and perfect choice for the planet. Rosangela says, Hotep, Grand Rising, Hotep. Linda says, Hotep. Roderick says, Hotep. Deborah, Hotep. Horace, Hotep. Hotep. Martha, Roderick. This is so good. Hotep, Roderick, great to see you. We're glad. It's good to just know that our African ancestors have equipped us. And Tim says, Ashe, my mom transitioned this AM, and I'm experiencing a peace I never expected. Oh, I'm so sorry, Tim. Praise and appreciation to you and your family. Wow, and you know, it's just a moment ago that we, as a family, were experiencing a major loss of my mom, a dad, a husband, you know, spouse, a child. These are major losses. And we'll talk more, Tim. And Kathy says, I have always wondered what the afterlife would be like. All right, so let me come back here. And then there's some folks I didn't get to say hello to. Let me see, Doug and Marty, Hotep. And let's see, who did I miss? Paula, Hotep, and Tim, and Wendy, and Zvanda. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. Hotep, Paula. Okay, and well, there's one question. Okay. Nick, Paula says, Hotep, beloved. All right, so let me go back here. Let's go back to our story. The man in dispute with his Ba soul. What does that look like? Now, this source goes on to say, the work has intrigued academics for its place as one of the most significant and introspective early philosophical works. However, the text itself has been translated in many different ways, so it's all about the translation, which have led to clashing academic theories on the text's theme and meaning. Most traditional translation of the work and most widely accepted translation is that the text is a commentary on suicide and the Egyptian funerary cult, as man yearns for the promises of an afterlife in the face of his earthly suffering. In this interpretation, his Ba attempts to dissuade the man of taking his life and convince him of the value of life on the mortal plane. Now, this is where we need to be, beloveds. It then goes on to say, more recent translations and scholarly works have disputed the insinuation of suicide in this text. Many modern interpretations instead view the work as the psychological struggle of a man and woman to come, and let's be brutal here. It's not just about a man and a woman. You have adolescents, you know, in large numbers leaving the planet. Age group, I can pull up that statistic, to 20 to 30, teens into 34 with high numbers of, so it's not just about men who wrestle with these psychological issues. So many modern interpretations instead view the work as a psychological struggle and of man to come to terms with the sorrow that life brings and accept its innate goodness. And this is what our African ancestors have given us. They have told us in this story about this struggle and the nature of the struggle, the naturalness of the struggle, because that Ba soul in its immersion in form, that form is going to have impacts that it's encapsulated and it's stuck there for its time-space continuum, and it's riveted by the impacts, and it has to endure or bear. I mean, when that lash hit the back of Kunta Kinte and all of our ancestors, that was a Ba soul in its immersion in matter, in those very coarse circumstances, in that world period, in the deeper materialization of consciousness cycle, trying to deal with the riveting of that impact. And so our African ancestors wrote about this, and they left it, and they didn't call it, you know, suicide. I mean, but they knew that we would struggle, and they have given us these instructions. So, yes, we are in the pain of incarnation and the pleasures. We're going to talk about the pleasures another time. As Haru, the Karas within. We are betwixt and between, and that is the struggle, and how to make the good and perfect choice and decision as Haru. And that's where we are as a planet. And so, and then there are some scholars who believe that the psychological turmoil of man in this text is a metaphor for the unstable political situation that was occurring in the 12th dynasty during the upheaval of the first intermediate period. So, you know, you can locate this type of struggle many places in history, and certainly we can locate them in the history that's happening now. And so we're turning now to a translation by Miriam Lichtham, and I'm just gonna share with you her some things that she has said, and it may be next week I'll put up her text and we'll see that together, but we're looking at her translation. And essentially, well, some little background is that the original papyrus copy was bought by the German Egyptologist. You know, there's been lots of talk about Germany and Germans as this Russian invasion is happening in Kuwait. Egyptologist Karl Lepsius in Egypt in 1843, and is now in the Egyptus Museum and Parussamlung, belonging to the Berlin State Museum. Beloveds, listen to this. The first edition, the transliteration happened. The first edition was published during 1859, and subsequently numerously translated with sometimes widely differing interpretations. But beloveds, where were we in 1859 as African diaspora people? Where were we? Think about that. When Europeans were crisscrossing the globe and pillaging the tombs and the temples, where were we in 1859? We were deep in chains. Our so-called emancipation wouldn't come for till 1863, you know. So just think about where we at that time in terms of not only enslavement, but in terms of colonization. And so we come to this famous text where Marian Lipschen says, she refrains from a general discussion of the meaning of the work and contents herself with a bald and brief sketch of what she believes is to be the plot. In other words, just don't put all that interpretation in there, what you think it means, just translate the words and let us read the words, right? Okay. And then she says, a man who suffers from life longs for death. So she believes this is the plot. Angered by his complaints, his Ba threatens to leave him. This threat fills the man with horror, for to be abandoned by his Ba would mean total annihilation instead of the resurrection and immortal bliss that he envisions. So, so part of staying in this form is, is earning that resurrection and immortal bliss. Remember the downloading of the computer chip. Ba is an individuation of spirit in dwelling form and having consciousness at its level of immersion. So, and we remember, beloveds, spirit has the right to assert itself and to make its descent into levels of immersion in matter that are coarse and vile and dense. Spirit has the right to make its ascent into forms that are refined and glorious and beautiful. Spirit, this is the right of spirit, and it's descent into matter and it's ascent into spirit. I'm keeping track of time because I want to make sure I answer any questions. So she then says, he therefore employs his Ba to remain with him and not to oppose him in his longing for death, a death that he does not appear to contemplate as a suicide, but rather as a natural, though greatly welcome death to be followed by a traditional burial. So you see, she takes that stance of just The pain of incarnation is pretty much her stance. The bar counters his pleas by telling him that death is a sad business and that those who have fine tombs are no better off than those who have none. It urges him to stop complaining and to enjoy life. So let us, as we penetrate into the story more next time, I know we'll get there to do the fullness of it. Let us examine this command, beloveds. How many among us need to be urged to stop complaining and to enjoy life? And when is it appropriate to have that command? I mean, you know, do you have that command to stop planning and enjoy life when you have every gizmo and gadget and live streaming and movie theaters and designer clothing? And is that when you should stop complaining and enjoy life? Or did many of our ancestors have to tell their beloveds on those plantations to stop complaining and enjoy life? When and how is this relevant? How is it relevant? This whole thing about complaining and enjoying life is clearly, you know, we laughed. We had times of laughter, and we noticed the flight of a bird. We noticed the sunrise, and you know, how do we immerse ourselves in those enjoyments of the earth when all around us there is travail? And so in this, there are two parables designed to drive home the point that life is worth living. The man's final answer is delivered through 4 exquisite poems in which he deplores the miseries of life and exalts death and resurrection. Now, this just tells us we just had the spring equinox, and where we celebrated the resurrection, the grand rising, the birth of the sun, and yet we can't pursue that at the expense of exiting the form prematurely. So these 4 poems in which he deplores the miseries of life and exalts death and resurrection. In brief concluding speech, the Ba agrees to remain with him. Because remember, the Ba is that storehouse of consciousness, that what we came here for, where you can't go come here as that particle of light, as that stellar being immersed in this form, robed in this form, to get what it is we're supposed to get. Because if the Ba leaves, we don't get what we came to get. And we didn't cite what we were supposed to cite as that one in the same eye that is in the sighting of itself everywhere. We need to see what's going on. You got to get the glimpse and the view, and whether you're looking out the ship of enslavement or whether you're, I don't know, on a yacht or shopping in the mall, or how do we enjoy life? And how do we bear to see when other people aren't enjoying life? How do we bear with that? So this is one of the poems, and I'll reread this next week, but I want you to just have this feel for this work, and then I'll come and see if there's questions that I can answer before we conclude for today. So this is the man, and this is his poem. He says, To whom shall I speak today? Hearts are greedy. Everyone robs his comrade's goods. To whom shall I speak today? Kindness has perished. Insolence assaults everyone. To whom shall I speak today? One is content with evil. Goodness is cast to the ground everywhere. All that bad speech going on, huh? To whom shall I speak today? He who should enrage men by his crimes, he makes everyone laugh at his evil doing. Does that stir up images of Trump? I mean, laughing at his evil doing. To whom shall I speak today? And as I continue, beloveds, in a moment, on that note of Trump, you know, we do have to watch and see if we're going to be a witness to this intersection on the right with what is happening in Russia. You know, the relationship between Putin and Trump, and now there is that vying for, which is already a Trumpite philosophy, to expand beyond just the borders of the United States. That there's that quest now for that global power, and so they are sidekicks, and we have to really watch what's going to happen with this election. And be witness and bear witness and stop complaining, because we have to enjoy life no matter what. He who should enrage men by his crimes, he makes everyone laugh at his evil doing. To whom shall I speak today? Men plunder. Everyone robs his comrade. To whom shall I speak today? We have countries being plundered. The criminal is one's intimate. The brother with whom one dealt is a foe. To whom shall I speak today? The past is not remembered. Now one does not help him who helped. To whom shall I speak today? Brothers are mean. One goes to a stranger for affection. To whom shall I speak today? Faces are blank. Have we seen some blank faces with opioid and excessive substance abuse? Everyone turns his face from his brothers. To whom shall I speak today? Hearts are greedy. No man's heart can be relied on. To whom shall I speak today? None are righteous. The land is left to evildoers. To whom shall I speak today? One lacks an intimate. One resorts to an unknown to complain. To whom shall I speak today? No one is cheerful. He with whom one walked is no more. To whom shall I speak today? I am burdened with grief for lack of an intimate. To whom shall I speak today? Wrong roams the earth and ends not. Death is before me today, like a sick man's recovery, like going outdoors after confinement. Death is before me today, like the fragrance of mirth, like sitting under sail on breeze day. Death is before me today, like the fragrance of lotus, Like sitting on the shore of drunkenness, death is before me today. Like a well-trodden way, like a man's coming home from warfare, death is before me today. Like the clearing of the sky, as when a man discovers what he ignored. Death is before me today, like a man's longing to see home when he has spent many years in captivity. Truly, he who is yonder will be a living God, punishing the evildoer's crime. So let me come here, beloveds, and see questions you may have. Paul, okay. Rosangela says, many of us who, knowing the purpose of life and have the life interrupted by the white supremacy system, yes. Is this interruption can be seen as a premature disruption of the Ba journey? Very well expressed, Rosangela. And there are those who have said it where, you know, Africa was on a course until it was rudely interrupted. You know, this is yes, it is white. This paradigm has been a major interruption. You know, and at the same time, travails that we have had to go through and are still going through, and all the while, like the eloquent peasant, relentless in our pursuit of justice and making things right. And that has been a major part of our story, is that relentless pursuit in balancing the scales and making things right and bringing things back into order. And Roderick says, what was the first reading on the pains of incarnation? Thanks. I'm not sure what you mean when you say the first reading. The pain of incarnation is what I've titled as like a subtitle of this story, the man in dispute with his Ba. So what you've heard today and what will be posted ultimately, as I'm a few tapes behind, is this service today. I don't post every service, and then I sometimes don't post all of the service. So you do want to come and hear firsthand and then be able to ask questions. But you didn't miss anything, Roger, if you're thinking that there was something that was missing because there isn't anything that came before. Now there are other videos on YouTube in this series. Maybe that's what you're referring to. He says, got it. I should have asked, what are you reading from? Okay, okay. All right. So other YouTubes are up on this series, and there's another one behind this, and then there is this one today. So and then there's one where we had some technical difficulties, so I have to see what can be salvaged of that and what needs to be repeated. Let's see, let's go to chat here. She mentioned Dr. Ricchetti. Oh, okay. Yes, 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 and that's from the video that hasn't gone up yet. So you'll be able to see that if that's what you're making any reference to. But it is a series, and you'll be able to see what has been said before, as well as immerse and embrace what has been said today. The prior videos were cosmically and cosmogenesis, cosmogony considered, and then because we move celestially, and then but today we come into Earth with a thud. This is the terrestrial talk about Ba in its the pains of incarnation. What does it what it means to incarnate, and what is it that we are working through in that incarnation. All right, let me see the chat that I use. Okay, and then Roderick says, thank you. And Linda says, this will become my daily mantra. Stop complaining and enjoy life no matter what. And, and that's, and as I teach here, and as our African ancestors have instructed, there is no death, and there is only a seeming death. And that overcoming that seeming death is the biggest mental health challenge that we have, because we are in this sense of loss and mourning. Let's see, Horace made a statement. Let me see. Let me go there and see what Horace said. Horace made a statement. Where is it? All right, where Horace made a statement to everyone. Did I miss it? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. All right. Let me see what Horace said. Thank you for pointing that out. And keep me on track, beloveds. All right, I need that. If you can't hear me, if I miss something, please point it out. And thank you so much. I appreciate that support. He says, I have often pondered why I am here and wondered what could all this turmoil around me mean to me and my personal ascension. Beautifully expressed. I can only imagine that it is a lesson in perseverance along the road of austerization of spirit. Wow, excellently expressed, Horace. Excellently expressed. And this is what we do. And I talk about this in one of my books, On the Way to Finding Your Soulmate. I talk about those times in life where we are walking the road and we are groveling, about things as they are. And we lose sight of marveling about things as they are. And we want to remember, beloveds. And of course you're going to hear things here you're not likely to hear other places, at least not unless you're in very metaphysical company. But it really is about enjoying the journey. I mean, we're particles of light. We these stellar substances come all this way and hit the earth with a thud, and we look out and we have these. I mean, imagine being Kunta Kinte and looking out from behind his eyes and being in the hull of the ship of enslavement, and having your senses, take in that stench of death and dying all around him, and the pain and agonizing that was going on in his body because he's on that wooden plank surface, and the muscles were abraded down to the bone. His back was abraded from the rocking, and I tell this in my writing, because he had a moment with all that was going on around him, as he lay chained, he, in all that agony, he dozed off. And in that dozing off, he had a horrible, horrible nightmare. And from which he was aroused, you know, in a scream, in a panic, he was aroused from that nightmare. And then he looked out, and this is the point, beloveds. When your worst nightmare is the same as your outer reality, that's a pretty deep immersion in matter and in encapsulation in form at a place of deep pain. And we've been there, beloveds. We as we watch these Ukrainians, we want to, you know, be empathetic, be sympathetic, but no, we've been there. Our work now is to move with all deliberate speed, and it's under this this war, this confusion, that we need to take and this distraction. This is a distraction. I mean, if this hadn't broke out, there'd be civil war now. We'd be in civil war. That doesn't mean it ain't coming, because we still have to get through this election, and then there might be this confluence of energies with Russia and Trump if he wins, or cheats to win. But our work now is to go forward with all deliberate speed. Go forward, go forward, go forward. So on that note, beloveds, we're at that time. We do our best, our utmost best, because you have places to go, people to go, to things to do, people to see, your life purpose to fulfill. So we're not staying here all day. Beware of places that keep you somewhere all day and you can't get to what you're supposed to be doing. Your free will agents to attune to your life purpose and be at that. We look to see you next Sunday. Please invite others. Let's increase our membership in 2022. And let's just see the comments that are coming in. Oh, Andrea asked a question. What did Andrea ask? Let me see. Where is it? Can I see it? Oh, I don't know how I didn't see this. Oh, so I saw Horace's, and then Linda says slavery, and then Nika says, as they are resurrecting the truth of our ancestors, the spirit of rebellion is born. Yes, yes, very well expressed, Anika. And Andrea says, perhaps the rapture is represented by mass peoples having this BA conversation, Ba conversation, without utilizing the Ka and leaving this form. This Ba conversation without utilizing Ka and leaving this form. Now, these are insights that we need to unpack more, Andrea. Yes, I hope everybody sees this to ponder that Andrea has put here. Perhaps the rapture is represented by mass peoples having this Ba conversation without the Ka and leaving this form. Okay. Yes. Because there's no shortcutting it, you know, we can't shortcut anything. And that's why we also know that this is not about a vicariously acquired by the actions. We have to do the work of our heart. We have to do that work of our heart. And Roderick says, "Oh God, it should be asked." Okay, reading. She mentioned. Okay, okay. Thank you for keeping me on track, everyone. Scroll back up. Andre asked a question. Wonderful perspective, Tim says. And we'll talk more, Tim. Again, my condolences. And Linda says, "Thank you, Hotep, Horus, peace and blessings to all." And Anika says, "This rapture is so fascinating. I've often wondered if they manipulated the Ba with sound, causing it to enter and exit at its will." Let's talk about this more. Because we're there. We're preparing the way to talk more about these, all of these things. All right. So peace and love, everyone, and look forward to seeing each and every one of you next week. Tell everyone about our service, and we say Onk Uja Seneb, life, prosperity, and health, everyone.